Podcasters Roundtable round 132, I think, exclusive podcast. An oxymoron, question mark? I don't know. We're going to find what to talk about. Can you be exclusive and be a podcast? I don't know. Let's find out. Let's meet the roundtable first up. We have a static image, but maybe we'll just jump right in. Daniel J. Lewis, welcome back.
Thank you. I am enjoying the benefits that, the reverse benefits. Instead of the IRS asking me for iTunes gift cards, Apple has offered me iTunes gift cards.
Wow.
Or I wish.
Wow.
Oh, okay. I'm quite distracted by a little box in the corner that is now telling me Hangouts is going away. So, like, officially, they're telling me that. However, they're just going to the quick streaming thing. I imagine they'll still be doing this. But anyways, we won't go there. Dave Jackson, welcome back.
Yeah, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com.
Awesome, man. Paul, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. T-shirt week? Is it T-shirt week?
I got a new T-shirt.
T-shirt.
Where's my T-shirt?
It doesn't have anything on it, so the logo's not good enough to put on a T-shirt. I tried.
That's right.
So
you can have a coaster.
Ooh.
wow. School of Podcasting coaster. It's related. All right. Hey, and all the way from across the globe, Stephanie, welcome.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited to be on here for the first time.
Where are you exactly?
I am in Shanghai, China.
Amazing. She's in the future, literally by a whole day.
Yeah, it is 7:30 in the morning over here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. We've been trying to get you on here for a while, and I'm glad we were able to finally do it. It's a little hard when time zones are so dramatically different, but keeping that international flair going here, I'm so excited by that. And this might be our farthest reach. I feel like maybe China one other time, but I don't know. We'll have to look.
I think Heather might. Oh no, wait. Heather might be closer to you actually.
Where is she?
Yeah, she's in New Zealand.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
we're doing good. We're doing good. Going just like podcasting. We're all around the world, but we're gonna close those little worlds up, shove them into a box, and make you listen to a podcast on one platform. Is that a podcast? We're gonna find out. There was some rumor, a leak. Someone's probably in trouble. Their NDA violated. We saw some reports that Apple may start investing in, I don't know, would you call it original podcasts? Are they going to pay people to create podcasts? Or are they just going to purchase podcasts and then make them only be on Apple? What did you hear? What did you read, Paul? There were several of these reports.
Well, reports, and, they happen a lot in the podcasting space.
Yes.
So take each of them with said grain of salt. But yeah, I heard Apple's going to spend some money on some custom stuff to them. And that's about all that was heard. And it will be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, if it actually happens. I mean, people say it makes sense. Spotify, it's a rebuttal to what Spotify is doing, who they sort of came crashing into the space, spent a ton of money. They're essentially paying podcasters to be on Spotify only. We've got Luminary launched, and it's even more than, I feel like that. It's not only exclusive to Luminary, it's behind a paywall. Spotify stuff, not necessarily, I don't think, with their Gimlet purchases and Anchor and all that stuff. And then where else we've seen it? Stitcher they got into their own content, right, in the past. They stuff that you could, I guess, was probably like a Stitcher Premium thing. What do we think? I mean, I don't like to just, it's better to have facts, but we could just making up stuff, what we think. Maybe we should just go with if it does happen. Or you think it's more likely people are kind of saying, oh my God, this is how they're going to do this. They're going to work it into Apple TV and all this stuff. And kind of like hinting that it might be a premium option. I don't feel like it's a premium play so much as it's a be on Apple Podcast play. What do you guys think, Daniel?
Well, all that we really know at this moment is the rumor that someone leaked that Apple is interested in investing in some original podcasts. I don't think we even necessarily know whether that means exclusivity.
Sure.
Or if it just means sponsored content.
Let's pretend it's both, right? Let's pretend that I just want to know what you think. I don't think they would lock it behind a paywall. Anyone else agree with that, or who thinks different?
I would go with there would probably be a variety of things. There might be a paywall for some of them. There might not be for some. And there'd be all the rest of the podcasts that already exist on Apple Podcasts. I think a rainbow is highly possible.
I think look at what Apple is already doing with some of their other platforms and their upcoming platforms as well. So there has been Apple TV before, which is just you can buy shows through iTunes or Apple TV and watch them on your Apple devices. They didn't have any exclusive shows. Well, they had Carpool Karaoke, but that was pretty much it. And you weren't paying for Carpool Karaoke. Now with Apple TV,
well, you had to be actually technically with Carpool Karaoke, you had to be an Apple Music subscriber to get that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. And they also had an exclusive radio channel for Apple Music subscribers as well. So there was some exclusive content in addition to everything else they offered, which was everything that everyone else also offers in terms of shows. But what they're doing, some of this new stuff, like with Apple News Plus, Apple TV Plus, and the new, was it Apple Arcade? I think they're calling it, where they're coming out with exclusive titles that will only be available in those services. But that goes along with things that you're already getting and using them for. So
this would go dramatically against sort of Apple and their sort of what they've done with podcasting. And it just would not be the same as something that they've created on their own before. Like it's a platform that has existed for a long time. It's known to be open and accessible, and they haven't even monetized podcasts really. What do you think, Dave?
Well, when I think about all the awesome content that Apple has made in the past, oh, wait a minute. And I don't know about you guys, but when I saw the Apple TV stuff and was like, oh, look, they're redoing The View and they're redoing it. I didn't really, for people that like to quote, think differently, I was kind of like, well, I hope it'd be great if they found something really nichey and they, that was like, wow, this is really cool. I didn't know this existed, or something very creative. I would not be surprised if they announce, hey, we're going to get insert famous person here, the Tom Cruise podcast.
Well, that's exactly what's going to happen. They're not going to reinvent the wheel. They're going to just go pay for big stuff. Like Spotify picked up stuff that was already, in some cases, really popular. Some of the Gimlet stuff. I know there's a music podcast local to me that got picked up. It got basically a year's salary to produce a podcast only for Spotify, but anyone can listen. You just have to listen on Spotify, which, okay, so for me, I feels like I feels like a platform play. Like you want people listening on Apple Podcasts. Like, and if they come to another way of monetizing that app, maybe they go with ad. Maybe, I don't know if they get ads. Paul, do you think it's more likely that they want to put content as a generating, as a revenue generator, or they're looking to just create people going to a platform?
In my opinion, Apple historically has always gone to where they think the best money is at the most place. They don't do the discount computers. They don't do the discount phones. They don't do anything. They go to where the money is. And the money in podcasting for Apple, if they were to include pay-per-click inside of the podcast store, like they currently do with the Apple Store, will make them so much more money. All that crazy money being spent right now, Apple can start getting some of it if they were to do something like that. And they're not doing that at this point. It's coming. We know it's coming. But if Apple was looking to monetize their podcast position, that would be it. And so what this is probably is a couple things. What you just said, Dave, about Apple TV Plus not being that exciting. You have a real problem because we got Disney coming out with their channel, we've got Apple coming out with their channel, we've got all these additional things that are happening.
Congrats, we invented cable. It's not my joke. It's not my joke.
Exactly. And they need something to get people to watch the show. Now it's funny. One of my earliest favorite shows in the entire planet was Ron Moore doing his commentary on Battlestar Galactica. And that was one of the earliest ones. And kids, ask your parents about that show. But it was a fantastic show. Well, on this new channel, Ron Moore has a show. They can't give that away for free, but maybe the podcast about Ron Moore's show something Apple could give away that kind of by default kind of promotes Apple TV. Same thing. They have this gal named Oprah. She's an up and comer and nobody's really heard of her, that type of thing. She's going to be doing a TV show that's premium. They've got to get a way to advertise what Oprah is doing. So I think you're going to see a series of podcasts produced by Apple that elevate the podcast platform. There are people right now, I've spoken to people who said, and I quote, podcast, that's like Spotify, right? They're doing the job. The other guys are doing the job out there, and Apple needs to start doing commercials. They need to start promoting the podcast platform. And I think this is what the game is. I think you'll be able to get the Oprah show on Stitcher, but it's going to be the Oprah show from Apple, sponsored by, TV Plus.
How long do you think it'll be until our parents start saying, "Oh, I can't listen to podcasts because I don't have a Spotify"?
Yeah. It'll be a while, but the thing is, you have to look at the money. The money for Apple, the number one with a bullet money play is pay-per-click inside of the store. That'll be huge for them. And then all that crazy money that's there right now. Right now they're just going to spend money at parties at Podcast Movement. They have no other place to spend the money. Apparently, some of them are sending the Audacity to Podcast some iTunes gift cards, but I haven't gotten mine yet. I don't know what's up with that. But the money, it's not a money play. It's a positioning play. And no, our parents aren't saying, I can't get Spotify, but Apple as a podcast platform is losing a little market share, and they can just leverage what they're already doing. Remember, yes, Dave, they don't have big shows, but they got Sexy Action Aquaman, they got Oprah, they got Ron Moore, they got Steve Carell, they've got some really huge names associated.
Jennifer Aniston.
They got Jennifer Aniston. They've got every single demographic out there. For people who pay for TV. That's the funny thing. If you notice, they have nobody from the YouTube world, because YouTubers don't pay for TV, which is what we saw with the death of YouTube Red. So it's very strategic. It's very purposeful, and it'll be interesting to see what comes from it.
Stephanie, do you have thoughts one way or the other, whether...
I have so many thoughts. I have more questions than answers, and you guys have way more experience in this, so I'll just put them out there. Why did Apple create the podcast platform? Why does it host so many podcasts, and why hasn't it done anything monetary-wise this entire time? It feels like they've been sitting on this huge... Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Paul, yes.
Yeah, thank you. First time caller. Apple has not, no, this is important. This is huge. Apple has not needed to do anything until this point.
They've been, you got to say, they've been coasting.
They have been coasting because that has been the best strategy. When you own the market share that they do nothing.
But why host all of these podcasts and do nothing with them? Like, I don't understand why they even started.
Just to make sure.
Okay, sorry. Host is not the right word. Why? What word would you use?
Well, because it sells iPhones, it sells iPods, it sells iPads. That's when they do it.
And if we go back to the early days, they were like, look, this little iPod thing holds 1,000 songs, and everybody went, that's $1,000 at 99 cents a piece. Oh, wait a minute, it also holds these podcast thingies, and they're free. And people went, oh,
and podcasts enabled them to have iTunes in different countries where they could not yet sell other content. So the podcast gave them that gateway. And I think even today, the reason why they support podcasts so much is because they align with what Apple wants to do, and that is help people tell creative stories, have great conversations, be creative, make art in different ways. Like, why do they give us GarageBand now? Remember the old days when we had to pay for GarageBand and iPhoto and all of that stuff? Now they just give that away on their platform because they're really about enabling people to create great things. And podcasts are a super easy way for them to bring extra value to their platform, as well as support all of that creative content.
It's the same way that Google does such a great job at helping you succeed on YouTube. If you're really in that platform, the better you do creatively, the more money they make. And we know they get that through ad clicks, right? So Apple, it's the same thing. The more you create with our platform, in our ecosystem, put it on our platform, and it maybe, if they are going to invest in podcast and it is about the platform and getting more eyes and ears to it, especially as many leave, which is a weird thing to coast. If you're coasting it, at some point, you're going to get behind. You're going to have to catch back up a little bit. So that's always a little weird. But which is why we've always kind of pushed on Apple, like, hey, let's do something more here.
Right.
And it also helps others do something more in theory.
Yeah. But that's an interesting analogy to YouTube, because YouTube has changed the platform. It has support for the content creators, and Apple Podcasts, I know they're not a host. That was a bad choice of words, but they have just like not changed what you can do once you put your podcast there, once it's in that funnel. So what if, and here's my follow-up question, if the competition wasn't there now, would they have done any of this if Spotify
not according to Paul? It'd be Coast City.
No, there's no need to. Now, you got to realize Apple is right now is a bit schizophrenic. Apple is two companies right now. They're a hardware company and they're a services company. And this is really important. All their money, all their profit, phone going down, iPad going down, services going up. And that's why the launch of Arcade, that's why the launch of TV, that's why the launch of, iCloud. I mean, one of the reasons why iPhoto, they're giving iPhoto away for free is because, my iPhoto library is so freaking big that I pay them now the $10 a month to get my terabytes of stuff. And so Apple is two now. And this is really important. And on the services side of things, there are people inside of Apple, there are whiteboards up there where they're going, how do we make money on podcasts? But strategy, positioning, reality says take a slow. But there is a group. Daniel's right. There's a division of Apple that wants to sell me devices to make things on, but there's another division of Apple that wants to sell me ones and O's. And he's laughing.
No, I'm not laughing at you. There is a chat. So youtube.com/podcasters roundtable or podcastersroundtable.com/live. If you're not in the chat, you're missing out. We're just laughing behind the scenes. This is what you're missing. If you're listening on the podcast version, I get it. Most people are going to listen that way, but come over and check us out. People pop in, they're like, it's the first time I've been here. And the best part is when people pop in the chat and they recognize someone they see, which is what happened. Someone recognized Steph. So they said Steph, like that's shortening it. I don't know if you like that or not, but that's what they said. So anyways, you got to get in the chat.
Yeah, speaking of the chat, Baines in the chat mentioned that perhaps a better analogy would be to gaming. And like you have Steam and Epic that are services where you can buy a game. I'm not so familiar with them because they're PC gaming platforms, but I think of like on Xbox too, there's Xbox Game Pass, which lets you subscribe and you get access to these certain number of games that come and go, kind of like Netflix. But then when you stop your subscription, you no longer get access to the game, or when the game is removed from the service, you no longer get access to the game. I don't think Apple is going to do something like that.
They're doing it with music right now.
Well, I mean, in the sense of where, going back to the Steam and Epic example, sorry, I didn't make a connection there. I didn't verbalize that. On Steam and Epic,
but like I have albums on my phone that go away the second I stop paying. What's the difference?
Right. Well, are you thinking they're going to do that kind of thing with the podcast too, where you subscribe to the podcast and you're paying for the podcast?
No.
See, that's what I think Apple probably has had in mind to do for years. And Apple moves very, very slowly because they're very intentional and they do a lot of hard work on the back end. You never see Apple release something, almost never, in beta. Everything they release, they try to make it its final product. But I think
I got an iPad running beta right now.
But it's not. That aside, I'm saying they're not selling it yet as, get this beta product like Gmail, was beta for what,
18 years. Yeah.
So the question, Apple would always at some point allow the creators to monetize their podcast through Apple Podcasts, because you look at apps and podcasts seem to follow maybe 3 or 4 years behind what's happening in the App Store. So in the App Store, you've been able to purchase apps as well as in recent years, subscribe to apps, and that unlocks extra features. I could see Apple potentially offering that same kind of thing through Apple Podcasts, where maybe you're getting an exclusive show, or maybe you're getting extra bonus content. So it's like Patreon, but you're subscribing directly through your podcast app. And then Apple takes their 10 to 30% each year or whatever deal they work out. And then the creator gets the rest of it. I could see them planning that for a while. And maybe that's what they're going to do with these new shows. And if they do that with these shows, then I think it's only a matter of time before that functionality trickles down to the other 99.99% of podcasters.
What is the why not just we want you to use Apple Podcasts, period? Like, I don't want you using because we know that people don't generally use multiple podcast apps. You got an app you like. If you leave Apple Podcasts, you're not going to consume an Apple Podcast unless there's a reason, right? So there's this really great show. All I have to do is use Apple Podcasts. I'll use Apple Podcasts. You know, for me, it seems even more simple that they would just say, here's content that you only get. It's free. It's just on Apple Podcasts. You got to use Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. There's more money in the pay-per-click inside of Apple Podcast search than there is in the ads on the shows. They want.
And I'm talking about ads on shows.
They want people using podcast. They want people using Apple Podcast to sell the ads inside of search. That's more than the ads inside of the shows. Infinitesimally more. Mm-hmm. Apple's here for cash. They're good capitalists.
Even to your point of, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, you can be served all this other advertising, so to speak, for their other products on Apple TV, Oprah, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But not necessarily having to pay for the podcast version of that. It almost feels like a billboard version of, here's what else we have to offer you.
No, it's why it's think about it as cable TV. Like, I can get NBC over the air right now, but the cable station wants to give me NBC by cable because they get, every third insert or whatnot on the commercial stream. The cable station giving me a free television show is extremely profitable for them. And it's more profitable to do that than it is to rent me HBO, because the delta on that's really, really small. Apple wants to be at the front, take a little bit, every piece. It's the Amazon game. It's not, yeah.
Well, Amazon, every time I turn on my Amazon Fire, the top third of it is a commercial. It's saying, hey, The Lion King opens this Friday. And I'm like, do they have a piece of that movie? Or like, I'm like, no, they're probably just selling the advertising space, because why not? Why? Because it used to be I would log in. It's like, here's all this stuff for you based on you. And now it's like, well, now that's still there. I just have to scroll down.
Well, they will have it. They will have it.
Yeah.
You will get it. You'll get it on your Prime if you sign up for Prime when we get it to Prime.
That's true.
Like, it's coming.
Okay, so if Apple has exclusive podcasts,
is it a podcast?
No. Well,
is that an oxymoron?
Wait! You're distracting my question.
It's my job.
I know. Okay, if Apple has exclusive podcasts on Apple Podcasts, what happens? Because in the chat, Heather mentioned all of the platforms that Apple Podcasts get streamed to, get sent to, whatever the phrase is. What happens to those? Do those go to? They can't go there for free, so they'd have to go on those other places in a way that's paid back to Apple. Like, what happens with all of that?
I think the important thing is nothing changes for the way podcasts are now. It's like, it's almost like what Spotify did with buying content and adding eventually some premium shows. But everything's the same. Like, you're still going to have access to the API. That's another question of, is it a podcast, right? Because these original shows, if they are only available on podcast or even paid, they're not going to have an RSS feed, right? Like, so, but the API that everyone pulls from, I think, is what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Daniel.
I think
the Android user. Oh, sorry.
Apple does have the ability to do whatever they want with their API. So what they could do is simply probably take only a few lines of code that they have a toggle switch, basically, to say, this podcast do not publish through the API. And so all of those other apps that are just automatically pulling from the Apple Podcast API would not see that podcast, but it might still be distributed via an RSS feed and manually subscribable, but you would have to do a little bit more work to find that RSS feed.
And just on the exclusive thing, anybody listening to Amy Schumer or Trevor Noah or Russell Brand on Luminary? I'm not.
No.
Yeah. So I actually listened to Amy when she was free on Spotify, and I listened to 2 episodes, and it sounded like somebody gave her a lot of money to put no thought into her content and just talk because you're funny. And I like Amy Schumer, but I love her stand-up, but that stand-up's been worked on for 9 months before they film it, and this was not.
Well, and that's part of it too, is that, that's part of the thing about almost the joke on premium podcast. Has that really ever worked? Where have we seen? We haven't really seen that worked. That's another reason why I don't think premium is like the thing. Like, it's not the play. But
that's a great point, because I mean, going all the way back to Audible, when they tried to have Ricky Gervais had a quote podcast that you had to pay for, plus it had DRM on it. They've tried this a couple times, a couple different companies, and I don't know that. I mean, I'm not a member of Stitcher Premium. If I really wanted to get some old Mark Maron thing that's not available in his feed, I would bet the farm I can probably find it on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, imagine if any of those amazing, any of those big names are on a platform that you can just get by just using the platform. Seems like more of attraction, but Paul knows the business side better than I do. Anyways, Paul, so first of all, and I don't know, but Daniel, I mean, they don't need to use an RSS. If they're injecting their own show into their own platform, why would they need an RSS feed? Like, just make it happen.
I think it would be easier for them. It'd take less work to recode the app.
But if it's something that you can only get on Apple Podcasts, there's no way you'd be able to find that RSS. It wouldn't be available to you to get the RSS feed.
We have ways of making it.
See, but Apple's better than that. They're not going to let you get the RSS feed. It's like I can't use YouTube to host my podcast. Like,
does Sony spend money making content?
Sony? Yeah.
Yeah. And you can only watch it on Sony TVs, right?
No.
Oh, okay. So there's money to be made. Now, do you ever feel weird when you watch a movie and it starts with a big Sony thing and like your TV's got, insert cheapo brand TV?
Don't look Vizio. Well, that brings up another, I think, related issue to this is you look at Apple Music and you can listen to Apple Music through an Android device. You can, even when Apple TV Plus comes out, you'll be able to watch Apple TV Plus on a non-Apple device. It's going to be on Roku.
Yeah, Apple
smart
is
TVs.
not interested in locking anything to a platform.
Yeah. And that's certainly a smart move. That's something I think they can do more powerfully than many other players can. Spotify, I think, is the closest potential competition to in that regard, or Pandora. But maybe this is simply that I think they're just completely two different ways of looking at this. Everything falls under one of these two ways. Is either this is a play to provide exclusive content just to simply bring more people back to the Apple platform, or this is a way to sell content, monetize something, maybe offer an Apple Podcast Plus kind of service later this year or next year.
So we don't know anything till any of that happens, and we're just making up stuff. We burned 20 minutes. It's my fault. But let's think about, because Paul, you had some good questions, or at least I don't know if these are questions. Yeah, they're questions. The indie podcaster, will we get lost in the mess? I say we because I think we're probably all indie here. I would categorize us as indie. We should maybe define what that even is. I use the term indie podcaster all the time. Anyone want to take a crack at that? I know what I mean when I say it, but Stephanie, what do you think of indie podcasters? Non-network. There's so many networks. Daniel has a network.
Yeah.
I had.
Had, whatever.
Well, I mean, even that.
No one ever pod fades. Come
on. Eric Fisher, host of Beyond the To-Do List, is in our chat right now. And he was on my network. And yeah, I still always looked at his show as being an independent show, even though it was on the network. And I would say not just not being associated with a network, but more like not being associated with a big network where they're doing everything for you.
You're not paid by a corporation or a startup, or you have maybe 1,000 downloads per every 1 to 2 weeks that you do an episode. Congrats, you're indie. Do you edit your show? Do you do the editing on your show? Do you get paid to sit behind a microphone? Do you get more than 500 downloads?
Yeah, if you are the music supervisor and the editor and the producer and the guest booker and the website designer, congratulations, you're indie.
Which is true, because I mentioned the music podcast that got picked up by Spotify. He's indie, even though, I mean, he's paid now by Spotify to produce that. But, I mean, it's just him in a garage producing all the stuff. I would consider him indie.
Joe Rogan is indie. I think he has a team of 3.
Yeah.
I think it's Joe, an editor.
But he's
and a
not indie in
producer.
terms of I mean, I think part of it too, when I say that, it's more about, it's like,
Well,
did you come with an audience?
I'm gonna
That's
say
part
that's
of it
the big
too,
difference. Yeah.
right? Like
He had-
you're trying to sort of break through, so to speak, try to be found as opposed to people already know. And Eric says in the chat room, he says, "Are indie podcasters not already lost in the mix?" We are the mix, man. We are the mix that makes this cupcake.
You know, there's a restaurant, a burger place between the studio here and home that always has a line out the door. There's one location, there's independent as it gets, and nobody in that place has ever said, "Dude, McDonald's is eating our lunch." You know, there are a lot. You know, there's Portland. We take our beer very, very seriously. You know, none of the good brew pubs have gone, "Oh man, you know, Budweiser, really, you know, hurting us."
Make good stuff.
Yeah, there's when you make good stuff, there's an audience for it. And the thing is McDonald's has got a lot of paychecks to write. You know, this local place doesn't, and you know, the numbers work independently. And you know, no, I would say, Eric, you know, we're not lost in the mix. We are the mix. You know, by the very nature of the way mixes work.
People get concerned when they heard this news that Apple will now just feature their stuff in the store, and that part of what your question here, will I, the indie podcaster, get lost in the mix? You know, and I already said, I think I tweeted out that, you know, I don't recall Apple coming for any of us to create a extra wide banner so they could promote us and put us on the front page, which they've been doing for a long time. It hasn't been just anyone goes to the top. They've been editorial, you know, they've been choosing stuff to feature ever since I can remember. What?
So it sounds
Say
like...
it. Don't just groan. You said you think out loud. Anyone, Stephanie, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it sounds like indie is a very murky term, but it sounds like creative control and how many hats do you have? And mostly it sounds like creative control because that's part of how many hats you have. Do you have a say in who comes on your show? Do you have a say in what the format of your show is? Do you have a say in what the end product sounds like? You know, there's all those different decisions. Do you make those decisions, or does the network or somebody else make those decisions?
Yeah, the decisions, I think, is very important. Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Super important. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm giving thumbs up to that.
Well, and I think sometimes the network is who is going out and getting ads. Because there are times when I hear, I'm sure they all say they have the right to turn down, you know, different sponsors, but I'm like, was somebody really going, please, can we, what I want to talk about right now, no, forget Chevy or Pepsi, get me undies. That's what to me, I was like,
Dave,
when somebody said, hey, we'll pay you X amount of money to talk about underwear, they're like, all right, everybody wears underwear, I'll do that.
Speaking of paying you money.
Underwear and fresh food. These are the things I hear the most on the big network. It's like, why?
Yeah. Dave, how much money can Apple give you for the School of Podcasting? Now, here's another thing. People were thinking, oh, should we pitch our podcast to Apple? Like, I was like, how is this route open to you? Like, I'll just sell my podcast to Apple. I don't know that there's going to be any opportunity to do that. But, you know, Paul, you ask, should I try and sell my podcast to Apple? Like, would that, I don't even think that would be possible.
No, it's not. But these are the same people who asked, you know, should I relaunch my podcast season 2 so that I get picked up by a TV show? You know, Rob Walsh did the numbers on that a little while ago. There's just these ridiculous questions that are going out there. And the game hasn't changed. If anything, Apple's spending a few more bucks to make their platform a little bit more front and center. And we're all good for it. Because when my mom to this day, you know, still thinks she can't listen to my stuff because she doesn't have an Apple, you know, and that was but when she comes to me and says, so I hear Oprah has one of them podcasts, how can I get me some of that? You know, she would. And that is what Apple is trying to do. And we want that, because if Apple spends the money to bring the mainstream onto the podcast app, then we can go, oh, by the way, I'm at the same place Oprah is. You know, I'm at the same place, you know, Steve Carell is, and Jennifer Aniston's starting to get in that demographic as well, despite what she wants to think she is. And so it's good for all of us that Apple spends some money putting the podcast app front and center.
Yeah. I am the one thing I know I kind of poo-pooed them earlier because of their content. I was just excited that Apple was again investing in podcasting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the point. Like, I mean, more money,
they-
more attention is always good for us, I would think.
Absolutely.
I mean,
and I'm hoping that whenever they do this, they make a commercial about it and put it on TV.
Yeah.
Ooh,
That's
Oh, they will.
That's what I'm waiting for.
yeah.
When I see the commercial that shows people how to subscribe to a podcast, I will do a backflip in my living room.
can I direct that commercial? Because it's going to, all right, here we go. Fade to black. Bold white text says amateur hour. And then it opens up.
Exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
That was amazing. Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that change is not bad. You know, I mean, there's different things that might come out of this, and we're all able to be in the mix. It's just a matter of the mix changing its composition.
And I think, again, like advertising, and I talk about a lot on this show, that a lot of those conversations don't even really involve us. And I think this is the same thing. Nothing changes for us. If anything, more people come to the platform and you have more opportunities to be discovered. People always wonder I'm so worried about discovery. Well, we need more people with more sets of ears, but nothing changes for us. You're going to upload your podcast. You're still going to appear in New and Noteworthy. Oh, wait, no, you're not. Because that's a big concern. I mean, like, it just doesn't, I don't really see much changing other than, oh, guess what? Apple also has his exclusive show that no one's listening to. Awesome.
Anybody want to bet? Anybody want to do a bet live here and let people come back a year later?
So what's the bet?
But on what? Yeah.
Bet is, I'll bet some good money that there is no exclusive content only on the Apple podcast product.
I won't take that bet.
You just think they're going to pay someone to create a show that you can then pay for no matter and get through whatever device you want. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
What are we betting? What is the wager?
There's going to be no podcast content exclusive to the Apple podcast platform.
No, I understand the concept.
She wants to know what are the stakes.
I'm betting $100 right now.
Oh, God.
Anybody want to take me up on this? You know, and
I did define this group as indie podcasters,
right?
Paul. So apparently you're not. Apparently the big money.
We buy a beer at the 2020 podcast movement bet. You know,
you said you have good beer in Oregon. That's all I want.
I would bet $5 that there's some sort of in between where there's a podcast of theirs that's part exclusive, part free.
I mean, come on. Money doesn't matter. It's reputation here. Who's the better podcast?
Oh, no, money matters. Independent.
It does. No, you'll get your money. But what you really want is the fame, right? Like, I think that, I don't know. You want me to take the fact that there will be something exclusive to Apple Podcasts? Yeah, I'll take it. Not for $100. I'm not taking it. But I'm willing to say, sure.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. Put some skin in the game, and then it becomes interesting. But yeah,
I don't look like a good prognosticator. There you go. I'll get spelling lessons with my $5.
There you go.
So none of these apply to us. We've answered all these, right? Will indie podcasters get lost in the mess? I don't think it'll be any different. Should I sell my podcast to Apple? You probably don't have the chance. So good luck with that. Is it a good move for Apple? Why not? Is it a bad move for the competition? I guess is the only thing. Does Spotify now go? Spotify got a little bit of momentum. They got out in the lead, and now Apple's going to say, "Whoa, come back, slow down."
Yeah, I saw the reports where like Spotify stocks took a small dip.
Yeah, stocks are stupid because stocks are stupid.
Speaking of stats that don't mean anything.
Yeah. I sneezed yesterday, but I didn't sneeze today, so Kleenex stocks fell. Like, it's just
exactly
stupid. So forget that. Is it bad for the competition? Paul, it's your question.
Nope. This one is a rising tide lifts all boats thing. And smart independent competition would would do the type of commercial where they would say, wow, looks like Apple finally is taking podcasting seriously. We've been taking it seriously since day one. You could do that kind of social media buzz and that kind of thing. It's good for all of us. The more money Apple does podcasting, it's good for all of us.
What would any directory, not Apple, fear from Apple, right? Because we talked about it. Apple has owned the space. They've owned the directory. They've got the ears. They've been coasting. They're losing it slowly. You've got other players coming in. Everyone's been number 2 has been open for a long time. Spotify is now, I guess, moved in that position. It's sort of moved around. Stitcher had it. Zune could have had it. But it's kind of always been open. Had they stuck around,
They never had a chance.
Whatever.
Just a disaster.
Yeah. Whatever. They gave up. They had it. My point is, everyone's had it. They've got their fingertips on it. Number 2 is mine. But what do they fear? What are these? Do any of these apps even care? Go for it.
Right. Yes. Can I flip that around and with that replace fear with be excited by or want?
I guess I would do that one. I want to come back to fear because I don't know if it even matters. Like, is no one's going for number? Maybe number 2 is exactly where someone wants. All these other apps want to be. They didn't care about number 1. But what do you mean? What? Go your way.
Instead of looking at the changes that Apple Podcasts may or may not make and being fearful of the repercussions that might have, can we look at what the changes they might make and how that might actually be good for competition, be good for podcasters, be good for the listeners?
Yeah, I think it's good for us, but I'm just curious about these companies that have a bottom line. Like Spotify, I mean, they only care about the podcast space because it can make them money. Like, Apple does feel like they have cared in some way about podcasting, as Daniel was saying, and whether that is a means to an end, ultimately create and be on our platform and grow our platform is one thing. Apple sort of holds itself out as this sort of open culture, creative, and they have sort of just sat back, and whether that has been a business decision or a philosophy, I don't know. But, I think it is good. I think, right? No, we don't have anything to fear. But I'm thinking more of the business interests of someone like a Spotify or a Stitcher or another Overcast, other platforms that actually need people, where people are like, you know what, Apple Podcast, that app got really good, and look what it has. But what would since Apple has not been doing anything, I'm trying to find out, Daniel, what could Apple do differently other than maybe original content is a thing, to take away some of the momentum that Spotify has got, or that would worry Spotify? We're like, oh, well, we need to figure out what else to do next.
Probably the best thing they can do is provide better content or a better package deal of some sort. Like with Spotify, if you're subscribing to the Spotify service, then you can listen to all your favorite music and probably your favorite podcasts all in the same app. And Apple, although Apple has separate apps, but they might still package something together where maybe, they have the Apple Plus plan where you get Apple TV Plus, Apple Music, Apple News, Apple Arcade, Apple Donuts, Apple Podcast Plus, Apple Everything Plus, all for one certain price per month. And it's a family share sort of thing. And it's just part of what makes the whole package more valuable. It's kind of like, do people subscribe to Netflix only because they want to see Stranger Things? Now, that might certainly be something that gets them there, but probably they stick around because there's a lot of other content they also want on Netflix because of the whole package deal. And I think it might be the same. Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Not to derail us, but Netflix just had the first month where they went down. They lost people, and they're saying it's not because of their rate hike. I'm like, you sure about that? Plus, they changed their format. Like, where do you go now to see movies that just came out of the theater? In my neighborhood, it's Redbox. There's no place to see them. But anyway, meanwhile, back at Apple.
I mean, it's inevitable anyways. Like, you can't grow forever, so
yeah,
they make enough money.
Well, you have to look at media because there's the money in producing the media, and then there's the money in delivering the media. Sony made the new Spider-Man movie, and the second run theater that'll have the Spider-Man movie in a couple of months, they will make money that night by selling $2 Tuesday nights to it. And, Apple is making their money by providing a means whereby which we get all the content we want. This phone lets me play the video games I want to play, lets me rent the movies I want to rent, lets me get the music I want to listen to, lets me get the podcast I want. And the second I start thinking about going elsewhere, in my mind, I say, you know what? Maybe that Android phone is where I want to go because they have Stitcher, and they have Netflix and they have these types of things. If the podcast platform, that will help sell the platform itself of the iOS devices, but Apple in the services game, and that's where all their future is right now, and that's where so much of their focus is them. Daniel pointed out that we're gonna be able to watch Apple TV on other TVs. Well, Samsung, the very competitor that makes the phone, that's the big iPhone killer, I can now watch Steve Carell, on my Apple TV products. So Apple is going to play in both games, and I'll tell you, I think their future is in services. And it's much easier. Tariffs, all that stuff go away. And if you look at all their focus and all their attention, that's it. So I think you follow the money, especially with established companies who have a long history of actually making money as opposed to being hype machines. They want to continue down that path, in my opinion.
And do you think this will help the independent podcasters other than just the rising tide?
Well, rising tide is a good thing. Like, it's like, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you like the play? I mean, it's a good.
First time Dave's heard that, by the way.
Dave's never heard that one before. That's an old one, Dave.
Look at him. He's going crazy.
I don't think so.
Dave is old, but apparently not as old as we thought.
Yeah.
I mean, other than making podcasting mainstream, what has Apple ever done for us? That's actually pretty good. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Well, I want to see this kind of feature come to the independent podcasters where we could have that ability to, not that Apple would sponsor us, but to say, I want to create a paid for podcast or maybe a paid for bonus where it's Patreon-like thing built into Apple Podcasts, where I could tell my audience, hey, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, click that premium subscriber button, whatever, and you'll instantly unlock these bonus episodes or something like that.
How many things does Apple have on their list that could make them more money than that?
And that's part of, back to Stephanie's question about like, why did they do it? Why do they stay in it? Like, this has never been podcast. It's like they have more money than like all the countries in the world, like some crazy thing, right? Like they're so cash. It's like a drop in the bucket. Like podcasting's never been a revenue, like to us. It's so relative to what could be life-changing to us is like nothing to Apple. Like they haven't had the motivation to, or even the money hasn't been real. In fact, we could argue, is the money still real now? When you talk about how it's a fraction of, it feels like it's going to 1% of the actual shows. We talk about this money and all this stuff is coming in the space. Who's really making money in the space outside of a handful of shows, like less than 1% of all podcasts?
Well, and we don't even know how much money this is even possibly about.
It can be as much money as they want. Like Apple can literally throw any amount they want to get any content they want,
according to,
and still laugh.
Yeah. According to Bandrew in the chat room, he says the last time he heard, Apple had 200 billion in cash.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's ridiculous. Like we don't even bubble. It's not even a blip on the radar. Podcasting is in terms of revenue and streams for Apple. So, I mean, now do we feel like, I don't know, Paul? Did we really think it's still enough for Apple to be that invested? Is now the time? Is that what they've been waiting for? Like a real.
So Joseph here asked a great question that kind of leads into what you're saying. Rising tide raises all boats. Doesn't change the size of the boat you're in. I don't see how this helps small podcasts. That's a good statement from Joseph, and we should examine that here. Apple, like was said, can add a couple of lines of code and make a heck of a lot of money. And Apple, if the podcast platform wants to turn on pay-per-click, The indies can outbid, they can pay more per click than Rogan, and they can get that search. They can do these things. So there are things that Apple could turn on that could allow us to do well. I've got a client who's got a standing order with me. If you can verify that you can buy me subscribers, real subscribers, my audience, my demographic, that kind of stuff, spend the money. It's an open order. If it pops up, spend the money, do it. And if Apple pops up, I become a bit of an agency selling this kind of stuff. So obviously there's a vested interest there, but he's as indie. I mean, he's making good money on it, but he's a small name. He just wants the right customers. And if Apple turns that on, he will do better. And his boat will get bigger, and buying your way in has worked. A little independent restaurant bought a space at the local really expensive mall, because it's the one last mall that people go to. I mean, they spent some money. They're now doing better because the people are walking around and they're walking to the restaurant to buy the stuff. And the landowners at this mall can charge more and more every year. The mall hasn't gotten bigger, but the rents sure have, and the mortgage sure have, because they make the thing more and more popular. And so that's more the analogy I'd say for Joseph. My podcast is still going to be me doing it myself, but if it's more part of the discourse, I can get more listeners, I can get more downloads. If I'm selling ads, I can get a higher CPM. If I'm getting leads, I can sell my product for more. Apple just needs to turn this on.
Elephant in the room. How does this affect content for the listeners? Or do you guys think it's going to get
better,
going to attract more quality content? Do you think it's just going to attract more celebrities coming into the audio space, or both?
For me, I remember, Paul and I remember, actually all of us remember back in the days when you could do your podcast with a stick microphone. And it was that's not acceptable. So as more and more people get in, I was asking a client this week, I said, okay, they do a sports podcast. So think about sports podcasts. It's people sharing their opinion about a team. And I said, great. What makes your podcast different? And I shut up and I heard a lot of silence. And they went, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, we got to figure that out. I said, because if it's you versus ESPN, they're a little bit ahead of you. You've got to go out and do those things that big brands can't do. You've got to go to the stadium and hand out business cards at the beginning of the game and tailgate and hang out with your audience. So I think we are going to have to. It's funny because on one hand, we all want to sound like radio, right? That seems to be like the way we do it. But on the other hand, think about what NPR's audience is versus how many people watch YouTube versus how many people watch all this other stuff. Radio doesn't have as much of the audience as the rest of media. Maybe we ought to start looking at YouTube and going, wow, these guys are crazy and they're doing all sorts of stuff that I would never hear on the radio. Maybe we ought to bring that, if it's not super visual, to a podcast. I think we're going to have to start thinking outside the box. I don't know. What do you guys think?
What happened after Serial?
Not really much, except everyone was talking about Serial.
I would say true crime blew up.
Oh, well, yeah.
And got all the money.
Right.
And everybody started
talking. Everyone bought an SM7B. Everyone cared about the reverb in the room. Everyone cared about telling a story. Everyone cared about getting to the point. Everyone cared about bed music. Everyone cared about blah, blah, blah. Like, content for that space got a lot better. A lot of shows got a lot of attention. It's still doing very well. Like, people sort of, you don't want to, you were talking about copying radio. You don't want to copy, but people, it kind of opened a genre, and people, a lot of stuff came out of that, whether you call it copycat or not. Entrepreneur on Fire, he found a format, and everyone copied it. Is it better? Maybe 2-3 shows came out of it that were inspired by it that were actually pretty good. A lot of garbage came with it. So yeah, anything good, if Apple's gonna invest. The thing is, we've seen this. We've seen it over and over now, where a large investment into original content produces pretty good content. And then, like I said, hopefully indie podcasters maybe get inspired, or someone gets inspired who wasn't podcasting before and says, oh, I really like that genre. And it gives them sort of a framework for how to build a show. And then, like Dave's saying, maybe they figure out how to add something different to it. But yeah, I think ultimately it helps the space grow from content perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Would you listen to the new podcast from Apple? If they're assuming that it doesn't cost any money or it's included in something you're already paying for, how likely would you be to check out Apple's new podcast?
Is it a
Ron
podcast
Moore.
about
Ron
podcasting?
Moore. I'm all over it, man. I don't care where it comes from. I subscribe to freaking Luminary for Ron Moore.
Yeah.
That's a lie, but still, Ron
It goes,
Moore, yeah.
it goes back to my analogy of there's always room for another hit song. Like a new song comes on the radio and you hear it and you're never like, yeah, I have enough favorite songs. I'm not going to listen to that one. If Apple made something amazing, I could not listen to it. I'm like, yeah, I mean, Stranger Things came out. I don't have time for another show, but I'm like, I got hooked. I was like, okay, I'm digging it. In fact, I think that's the mall Paul might be talking about. Is it called Starcourt? Paul, just asking. All right.
Nice, Ray.
I just started. All right. I don't. What else? I mean, because we've talked. It's a lot of. We're a lot of guessing. Hopefully, we've talked about some stuff that could affect most people who listen to this show. I don't think much. But what, Daniel?
What do you think these podcasts? So it sounds like these are going to be new podcasts, completely new, not just made exclusive.
That's
to
a good question. Are they going to do both?
What I'm wondering
podcasts?
is what kinds of podcasts do you think these will be?
They're going to be
Story?
ads for. They're going to be ads for arcade. They're going to be ads for TV. They're going to be ads for.
Look,
you know,
Spotify bought a music podcast for a reason, right?
That was me. I'm like, what does the typical Apple user look like?
Apple
And
has a little bit of data to figure out what does really well on Apple Podcasts. Daniel probably has that data.
Yeah. But
You know.
that's where if you can figure out who your target, that's the same thing. Who's your target audience?
Mhm.
Okay, I want somebody who uses a computer 24/7. Okay, let's make a podcast for that person.
Are they trying to funnel people to Oprah? Then they're going to aim at that demographic.
Or like Paul said, if I can't steer them toward a bunch of hardware, let's make behind the scenes of Apple Plus
Mhm.
with interviews of Oprah talking about how she's getting ready for a podcast and how Jennifer Aniston can't get along with anybody on the new set of The View or whatever they're calling it, and et cetera, et cetera. Give us the behind the scenes of that.
I think they might want to do something that's story based. And that's where
Everyone
a majority
does.
of the investment would need to be, is something story based. Like you look at, I haven't listened to the podcast, but the Wolverine podcast that came out a couple years ago, I think, and season 2 is coming out or just came out in 2019.
That was a Stitcher thing, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think season 1 was
Or-
exclusive. Season 2, though, I think is everywhere. Maybe I might be getting that wrong. But anyway, the point is,
Season 2s
was
go everywhere for a reason, by the way.
Yeah. it was an audio drama and heavy on the story, a story that a lot of people wanted to follow because of all the popularity with X-Men. And someone hears, oh, there's a Wolverine podcast. They already instantly know, oh, Wolverine, that's the character from X-Men. So it's going to be something I'm already familiar with. Maybe they're going to do something like that. Maybe it's going to be like, the Woody's Roundup podcast or the Buzz Lightyear Adventures podcast for kids or something like that, building on stories that we're already familiar with. But whatever it is, I think they're going to make it story focused.
Mhm.
Sure, that's where you get all the attention, all the rave. You bring in writers, producers, you tell a great story. You tell a good story.
And you hemorrhage
It's
money.
hard to find. You hemorrhage, but yeah, it costs millions of dollars. It's not
You
really
know
a
how much it
podcast.
costs to follow
the way-
Oprah around with a microphone, or give Ron Moore a digital audio recorder and say, give us commentary on the show. Apple's not going to do story. It's way too expensive right now. And it's just not, it's just, I'll go on record for that one.
And,
But what if they did a story that if it did really well would be a great thing on Apple TV?
So the podcast becomes your Bush League.
Yeah.
It already is, isn't it? Isn't that what they're saying?
I mean, it does, it sounds like it happens a lot because there's lore and there's Homecoming, but when you look at that compared to the actual number of podcasts, but the more people I talk to, when you get into the Pineapple Street or whatever, all the different production companies that said, hey, I can produce a year of podcasting for the price of one TV pilot. It's like, okay, well, let's throw it out as a podcast, see if it gets any traction. If it does, we'll turn it into a TV pilot. See if we can get some traction.
Oh man, Randy in the chat room was saying reality podcast because the cost is low. Oh dear.
That's how we got Cops.
Mm.
It's literally how we got Cops. There was no budget. It was like a writer strike or something, and they had no budget. And they said, and someone came with that. They said, this costs nothing. Like, ride in this car.
Oh wow.
And then, I mean, there's a whole new podcast, not new, but newish podcast about the TV show. It's like the longest running TV show. It turns out it's just a funnel for PR, but whatever.
Talking about TV show podcasts as well, and kind of building on the Ron Moore example, a friend told me about a podcast I checked out recently. There's this TV show called The Good Place, and it stars Kristen Bell and some other people in it, and it's on its 3rd season right now. It's a hilarious TV show, sitcom. I really enjoy it, and there's an official podcast for it from NBC. Now, the way they do their podcast is it's one of the actors from the show is interviewing other actors and producers on the show, providing all of this great commentary that's like a DVD commentary, or I need to update the language, like a Blu-ray commentary. And
is that really updating?
It's a little bit more updated. And it's this great content, funny insights, behind the scenes stuff, really valuable, really interesting, very entertaining. And
dirt cheap.
And it can be easily written into the contracts with the actors to say, all right, you will be an actor for our show for this many years, as well as host our podcast for us or be a guest on our podcast for us week after week for this many years.
Daniel, when you get a chance, can you put the Audacity to Podcast entire catalog on Blu-ray and send that to me in the mail? Thanks.
I'll fax it for you.
That's awesome. I mean, again, we're just sort of guessing, right? The rumor is Apple's, and it's funny because we're talking about money. Like, Apple is the one company that I don't think has to worry about money. So they're just going to try to create something good, I would think. But, that's also subjective. Like, who gets to put in charge of creating it? Do we think that it will be completely original, or that they'll actually try to go and buy shows? Will they approach the catalog
Original.
right, and say, we don't think, I mean, you guys don't think they're going to lock it down to Apple Podcasts. So they're not going to say, hey, pull your RSS feed from, you can't be available anywhere else. You're Apple Podcast only now. But, that seems to be what other platforms do.
Well, look at what they're doing with Apple Arcade. So for Apple Arcade, it's a subscription service that you will get access to, I think they said 100 games. And those are brand new games exclusive to Apple Arcade. But they're from some of the creators of other highly popular games. I think that's the kind of thing Apple might be looking at doing, is seeing, here are these people making great content already. Let's hire them to make other great content, but that new content will be exclusive to us. And
Exclusive free, exclusive paid. Has that worked? It hasn't worked. That doesn't work.
If I had $100, I would get in this betting game with Paul.
I mean, we've given the example before, I think, right? Cobra Kai, Paul's favorite show.
Oh, yeah.
Free, right? You don't have to. I used to have to do YouTube Red.
Free now.
Whatever that is. Free now. 2nd season.
Right.
Now free.
It's so true, though. That's what I love about it.
And 3rd and 4th. I think actually Luminary now has more shows than subscribers. I don't know if anybody ever did the math on that, but
wow.
I think that's come on, admit it.
Sarcasm,
it's true.
Probably true.
I would love to know what their Facebook ad budget is, because every time I fire up Facebook, there's Russell Brand begging me to come listen to his show. Come on, it's a good show. Check it out, right? And I'm like, dude.
Right. So Apple's not interested in that, right? Or are they just going to fall right back and fall into the same trap?
Well, see, that's where my thinking is a little bit different with some of these exclusive shows. So I know Luminary has exclusives and Stitcher Premium, and these different places have exclusives. I'm not interested in checking out any of them, but I am interested in what kind of exclusive show or what kind of original content Apple will create. But if it's behind a paywall, then I'm not interested.
Right. Exactly.
But Paul thinks it will be. You're going to have to pay for it one way or the other in Paul's world.
No, it's not going to be a high to paywall. You're not. There's going to be no exclusive podcast on Apple. It's just not going to happen.
Wait, I thought you could. I thought in your world you could buy it. Doesn't matter what device you're on, you can buy it, but you still got to pay for it.
They're going to do the Gary Leland. Gary Leland does a show about softball, women's fast pitch softball, and it put $100,000 to his bottom line because he quit buying ads on whatever it was, some sort of Google thing.
Mhm.
And so, we can buy ads, which are pretty expensive on TV, or we can just make a podcast and advertise our own stuff. So I think that's what Apple's going to do. Maybe
they're going to buy Gary Leland.
Ooh,
there we go.
Maybe he's the one who leaked the story. There ain't mention of Bitcoin in the story.
And then he's out.
Now
And then he's out.
You know, in thinking about the siloing and the aspects of that, something I think all of these companies that are trying to be the Netflix of podcasting, the major problem that they have that they don't realize is we don't need a Netflix of podcasting. We needed a Netflix of TV shows, yes, because before Netflix and Hulu and Prime and all of that stuff, there wasn't a legal way to get these shows through the internet. You had to watch them live or TiVo them, or you had to BitTorrent them, which was illegal. Now that there are these legal ways to do it and easy ways to do it, to get content you couldn't otherwise get, and a lot of content, so you don't have to be there to watch it live if you know, oh, I can just watch it online tomorrow, something like that. Netflix and all of those companies are solving a real problem that existed. That problem doesn't exist in podcasts. It's not like, oh man, I want to subscribe to School of Podcasting, but I can't be there when it's recorded live. So I guess I just can't watch it unless there's a Netflix of podcasting coming out. Now, there's not even a need for that kind of thing. So it's the wrong model. And I really hope that Apple isn't just trying to jump in on the Netflix of podcasting bandwagon. I really hope that they're smarter than that. And I think they are.
Well, can we go back one step further? Netflix originally was shipping DVDs back and forth. What they were doing was killing the Blockbuster video late fee.
Yeah.
And people were tired of paying late fees. They said, here, take a movie, keep it as long as you want. When you're done, send it back. We'll send you another one. And then they were smart enough to migrate. So they solved a problem. That was one. That's what a lot of these Netflix of podcasting stuff. What problem are you solving? You're not. And then they found an easy way to have all these. That's to me, they've ruined their model. I went there because every movie I wanted to watch, I could probably get on Netflix. And I was the guy that the minute it showed up in the mailbox, I would watch it that night and ship it back. I was watching 5 or 6 movies a month for, I think back then it was $7, something like that. It was ridiculous.
Netflix evolved again, right? They went from DVDs, they went to streaming, and then they figured out, yeah, we can't have everything, or we need more people, and then they had original content, and that was a windfall for them, right? Like they figured out that pouring tons of money, I guess, into original content, Apple's looking to do that, got people to Netflix.
On TV, there's different platforms. I think to what Daniel was saying, it's this was a thing that needed solving in TV and boob tube kind of stuff, but not the podcasting space. Now, Netflix, for the record, they always knew they were going to go in this direction.
Right.
DVDs was until the network caught up.
Right.
And so Netflix always knew, and that's just important in the grand scheme of things. Can I suggest that we examine, A, is there anything to learn from this? B, is there anything that we can do strategically about this? Does this affect us at all, or are we just a bunch of prognosticating podcasters? Is there something that happens here that we can take? And we could even go to the larger question is, undoubtedly, there's a ton of money being spent on podcasting this year. There's a ton. And a huge chunk of it will be the parties at Podcast Movement. So if you're not there, you're going to miss out.
I'm not there.
But
it's all a bubble.
What do we do? Well, but enjoy the bubble while it lasts. Once you're lucky, twice you're good. And so what do we learn from, let's say Apple doesn't do it. Let's say somebody else does. How do we, the indie, how do we, the smaller, leverage attention? How do we leverage money? How do we leverage, Steve Carell going on the morning shows and talking about his TV show? What do we do with this? Or not?
Well, that's a good point. We'll have to kind of, I guess, wait and see what happens, and in the meantime.
But Dave, how did your show change?
Nothing
Spotify
changes.
Spent a ton of money.
Nothing changes for us.
Nothing's changed in podcasting.
Nothing should change for us. No, I'm saying for us. If you're talking about what do we pull out of it? What do we do different? I mean, everyone's got different goals. Like some podcasters just want more listeners to geek out with them. Paul, you want clients. I couldn't tell you what I want. I don't know. That's why I just publish once in a while.
What you really want?
Dave wants members of the school of podcasting. We all want different things. Most of the things that we want as indie podcasters aren't affected by the moves of giant corporations in general. Even when people freak out and think, now I can't get the thing I want, that company wasn't helping you get it in the first place. Like, you got to make good stuff and go out and get the audience, find the audience. Like, no one else is going to do it for you. They're also not going to crush you. I mean, I think we also, bigger conversation around RSS. I mean, Paul, there was Tom Webster came out with an article today, and he's talking about ad models and revenue. And quite honestly, I mean, it was a great article, but I think he brushed off the idea of podcasting as an open platform. I mean, it was created and meant to be, we talk about the siloing and maybe the get rid, the downfall of RSS and all that stuff, and every platform having their own podcast that you can only get it in this one place. What about the sort of ecosystem that we've always existed in, where it's make a podcast, put it everywhere, anyone can get it, doesn't cost, it's not restricted to platform. Is any of that in threat? And does it matter? I mean, that he kind of held out in his article today that the death of RSS is not. I don't know. It kind of seemed to brush away the idea that the idea of open podcasting being in danger it matters. It doesn't matter. Like, back to the original question: is it a podcast if it's only found in one place? I mean, do you think it's a podcast?
We still call TV shows that are on computers and phones TV shows, even ones that never are on TVs. We call them TV shows too. So I think the term podcast is probably here to stay. For those people that know what a podcast is, I think the term is going to stick.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Did we just build something that becomes an idea and that people are listening to audio on Apple or audio on, but it doesn't matter what you call it. Like, if they call it a podcast, so what? But the idea of creating something and having it available to everyone, not sealed off. Like, the whole point is that we now have a global voice. The barrier to entry is almost nothing. No corporation can stand and turn us away or turn us down because we are available via an RSS feed. We're open everywhere. Is there any challenge to that as we see more podcasts, more companies develop their own show? And whether people call it a podcast or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, great. We've sort of put that in the zeitgeist, like people, I'm listening to a podcast, even if it's not, right? They could download an audiobook and think they're listening to a podcast. Cool. I hope they call it a podcast and then they spread that. But for the people who want to create something, used to be, we didn't create, a lot of us have shows because something was created that we could actually put a show out into the world, where I didn't have to go, hey, Apple, hey, Spotify, can I have a show? No, okay, I'll just go away.
So, Ray, are you asking if Apple creates this exclusive content, if it changes the industry so much that the independent ones that are produced will no longer exist, or people won't want them? Is that the question?
It's more about the death of RSS. It doesn't matter.
Well, go ahead, Stephanie, if you have a...
No, I'm still thinking.
Okay, I don't think it's going to kill RSS, because here's the thing. I'm reading this book right now. It's called So You Want to Start a Podcast by Kristen Meisner, whose first 3 pages of her book are her resume. She is an official Big Shot Smarty Pants. She's worked with CNN, WNYC. She's really cool, and I get to interview her on Monday, hence I have to read the book this weekend. It's a really good book so far, but it's a completely different thing. This is very much, again, where you go to a network with an idea And then just like in the movies, you get greenlit or not. And if you get greenlit, you get money to pay your staff and you make this really high quality stuff. Not everybody's going to be able to do that. And that's why I think podcasting, in the same way, if we go back to 2005, the great thing about podcasting was I can't get on the radio. I can't get on TV. I want to get my message out. This stinks. Oh, here's podcasting. You can reach the world for $5 a month. So I think that's probably why RSS will never go away, because there is always going to be that kind of punk element of it. That like, we're going to take it to the man, and you can't tell me what to do. And exactly, that was take it to the. We were when podcasting first started out, we were very anti-radio. We were like, we're sick of these people jamming the same 10 songs down our face. We're going to do what we want to do. And that was kind of it. So that's why I don't think RSS
jam the same 10 Jeff Smith songs down your face, or 10
Brother Love.
Yeah. So, oh well.
Yeah. Now tell that to Alex
Jeff.
Jones. Alex Jones still has the same syndication that anybody on the planet can have. He's just got to teach his audience how to subscribe to a podcast. And he could host his stuff on Amazon S3. I mean, if he really wants to get stuff out there, Alex Jones has the opportunity like anybody else. Yes, he's been, and I listened to Alex Jones on Joe Rogan. I think he kind of got a raw deal at times, but I'm not saying I agree that he's just let's not even go down that rabbit hole. But he still has the ability to reach a global audience, as does Glenn Beck, as does anybody else. Any insert disgraced TV reporter here. That's the beauty of podcasting. You just got to teach your audience how to subscribe. And that's always been the number one hurdle, is people are still going, wait, what? You got to what?
Yeah, we've worked pretty hard to establish how to listen to a podcast. And there's still, most people say we have a lot of work to go. What's a podcast? Where do you get them? How do you subscribe? Right. But then, there is a shifting paradigm where you've got these big companies who, well, you get that here. You get that at Spotify. Like we don't even talk about podcasts. And then they're teaching people something else, right?
Well, that's where Apple's jumping into this with skin in the game could be really good. That look at everything that Apple has created. They create commercials about it. They create marketing campaigns for it. And they're commercials that make people laugh. They stick in people's minds. And they're surprisingly simple and effective. Maybe they're going to do that same thing. Imagine during the Super Bowl or during some major primetime television show, there being a commercial for some new podcast or something, and then it says, listen on Apple Podcasts. And that's the call to action at the end. Just like all of their other things, they don't really explain this is how you use a phone. They just show you, look how great it is to use an iPhone. Look how easy this new feature is. Look how much this changes your life. Look how much you can enjoy your life more because of this thing we created. And by the way, this thing is called iPhone. And maybe they're going to do that same thing. And that, I think, could be what helps this industry so much more. Has there been a primetime TV commercial for a podcast?
No, not that I know of.
So.
There have been primetime show commercials for Netflix content, for apps, for browsers,
for Alex Inc.
Right, a show about a podcast, not a podcast.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Too soon? No, too late. DOA. I got that one right.
Yeah, I let my alexpodcast.com and alexincpodcast.com domains expire.
You can have them. They wouldn't buy them.
Yes, I think in any medium, you're going to have people who explore a lot and will see all the different places and all the different kinds of podcasts. And I think you'll have people who just go to one spot and just go there. And will they go to exclusive stuff by Apple if they start producing it? Probably. There are some people that'll just do that. And there are people that'll come in that way and then explore all the other places that podcasts are. And that exists in every part of technology I can think of, every entertainment part I can think of. Some people don't need a lot, and some people want to be told where to consume stuff, and some people like to explore. And I think that range is going to exist in podcasting too.
I also think there's such a large chasm between, there's just two different podcasters. There's the 1% and the rest of us.
No.
I mean, there's the ones that, it's a different game. Like, I mean, I'm not in it for ad revenue. So all those conversations about IAB, downloads, CPMs, like I'm interested as a space. Like, what are we interested in as podcasters who are part of of its own medium, right? Like, what interest do I have in podcasts, in Apple succeeding in spending millions of dollars on 2 podcasts that have nothing to do with me, right? Do I care? I mean, is there a divide? What's the connection between me and what is happening in the space that gets all the attention, this money and this news, where I just put out my podcast, Podcasters Roundtable.
One big advantage, people stop asking, what's a podcast?
Right. Which I think we've got there,
Well, and when I went to NAB and I saw, I think it was a 12K TV and there were 8Ks and all this other stuff, and it was ridiculously clear. And there's no way
8K is not clear enough. 8K is so freaking murky.
Oh yeah.
You gotta go 12.
Got to go 12.
Yeah.
And so when I see that, I go, wow, that's really amazing. And I know in about 5 years, I will probably have a 12K because of Black Friday for $400 in my living room. And, you know, I'll throw my 4K that's in my living room now into the dumpster because it's, you know, so when I see these big things happening that don't affect me now, it may be the audience that they bring in and all the talk about, oh my gosh, Will Smith has a podcast on Apple or whatever. You know, the audience that he brings may eventually trickle down to me.
I feel like we see more negative reaction when this stuff comes up than we see good reaction. And that could just be my Twitter feed, but it's a bunch of what I would consider people like us who talk about podcasting, who have their head in this space, who are independent podcasters. I see a lot of fear, right? People always, oh, what's this mean? What's this mean for the independent podcaster? I don't worry about it, honestly. Life is much easier if you don't worry about it. But
I mean, when I was in a band, you know, we weren't the only blues rock band in town. And on occasion, a new one would show up. And I'd be like, look, as long as we show up, make the people dance, help people sell beer, show up on time, leave on time, pay your beer tab, nobody's leaving. We're going to hold our audience. It's when we quit doing those things, when we quit learning new songs, when we quit playing the smaller clubs because we thought we were too big, that we started to lose our audience. So as long as you are continuing to deliver value, unless, you know, Tom Cruise, Will Smith, insert other big name comes along talking about the very same subject that you do, okay, that might be a problem.
And when House of Blues came to town, you guys had to shut down, right? Because when House of Blues built a restaurant in your town, all the blues went there, right? And the band was over, right?
No, actually, that was our goal then. In fact, I remember there was a place called Fat Fish Blue that was the big place before House of Blues. It went out of business, but House of Blues became the new big house.
You know, so you were an independent band. More money was spent.
Yeah.
You know, you wanted to play on their playground.
Well, yeah,
you know.
and more people were talking about the blues because we had a place called House of Blues.
Bingo.
is there any downside?
No.
No one here seems to be very.
Nope.
No. Very welcome to have more people know about podcasts and more choices for the listeners, honestly.
Right.
We know when the money comes, though, when it becomes about the money, we're not a space that started out about the money, right? Is there a negative side to that?
There's already a space in podcasting that's about the money. That already exists in the spectrum of things in podcasting. That's already there. There are people in it for the podcast. For the money. There are more people getting into it for the money all the time, because the more people know about it, the more they want the money that they think is in it.
And those people don't last. I had a conversation with somebody last night that left a comment on my YouTube video saying how Anchor I don't think is a good choice. And she goes, well, what am I supposed to do? You know, I've got all this stuff and I live paycheck to paycheck. And I'm like, look, if $15 for a media host is going to break the bank, you have bigger problems than which media host to use. And those people, it just, I hate to say don't need to start a podcast, but they don't need to start a podcast.
Sure. But that exists. It is attracting more people coming into it for the money. That is there right now already. So will it increase if there's more exclusive content on Apple? Who knows?
Well, I mean, part of that Tom Webster article that you tweeted out, Paul, had to do with the bad advertising that could also follow right behind that money and ruin the experience, right?
Oh, it has. It absolutely has. There's always this thing about, are you in podcasting for the love or are you in podcasting for the money? And I always get a little frustrated because there's actually an option for both, and I think that gets lost in translation. I've always said, I absolutely know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the best marinara sauce out there is made by some grandma somewhere to her family of like 7. And her marinara sauce kills and is the best thing out there. And I know that the restaurant I go to get my marinara sauce isn't as good. But you know what? I'm glad that restaurant is there. And that's about podcasting is if it is so much freaking fun that it takes our off work hours. What about the opportunity to let it take our work hours? What about it? To be our passion. I think that's an interesting thing that becomes passe. Becomes almost cliche to poo-poo those of who are in the money. I'm having a blast running this company because I get to help other people make podcasts. And so am I in the money? Yes. I'm in it for the money. Yes. But the love as well. And I just think that gets forgotten sometimes. And I don't think it's either, you're destined to be poor on a podcaster or you're one of those evil capitalists. I think there's something maybe in the middle.
Yes. And to clarify, I was talking about people coming into it just to make money,
right?
Not for people who are doing the overlap in the Venn diagram.
Right. And I think that's part of the problem is when people see a gold rush or companies see a gold rush, like these horrible ads that are getting injected in, and people and podcasters taking these ads for pennies on the dollar because it's the first money they've seen, or a network taking a whole group of $5 CPM ads of garbage stuff. And, what does that do to the space? I mean, there is some element, if you have any love for the content, you're good. Like it's not about that. Like it is, I'm more concerned with the stuff that comes with success and pouring in more money with that is just there, for only that purpose. Like there is no love involved. Like Stephanie, you're saying, it's just, people come in like Dave, like I need money. You're like, well, that's not going to work, right? But on some level, the whole ad thing with the cheap ads and garbage content, that could become a problem, as Tom was stating. I don't know, what was Tom saying basically there? What do you agree with there, Paul?
Well, if Apple spends a ton of money to get mom to listen to podcasting for the first time, and then mom listens to podcast and it's a crappy experience because somebody bought a bunch of, forget the 5 CPMs, dude. We're seeing 2 and 3 right now. That could be the damage, and there should be a little bit of policing there. That was what Tom was saying.
Yeah.
Tom.
Cool.
Get him on the show.
Yeah, no. I'm just fishing for feedback here. All right. We have run long. We're beating dead horse, but we're having fun just making stuff up. Slow energy today. Is it hot where you're at?
Yes.
Is it hot everywhere? China?
Well, I can't speak for everywhere. I'm very intentionally only in Shanghai. It's 81 right now, and it's 9 o'clock in the morning. It's been in the 90s for a while, and it'll probably be like that till November.
Super humid?
Oh, 90%.
Oh, yeah.
Yo.
Yeah, clearly I didn't mean all of China. That would be a little hard to cover the weather report.
Oh, gosh, no. Yeah, I would not even try. Giant place.
All right.
Yeah.
Just taking the temperature of the room, so to speak. All right. Let's get out of here. My goodness. Daniel J. Lewis, 2 in a row, buddy. Thanks, man.
Thank you. It's been great to be back, and I will be back more often now. For people who watch the video, or maybe this is a reason to go back and watch the video, there is a studio rebuild in progress behind me. So I will be getting back into podcasting soon over at theaudacitytopodcast.com.
Awesome. Dave Jackson, thanks, man.
Yep, always great to be here and hang out and have some fun. And you can find me at schoolofpodcasting.com.
I think Dave was the one who put 90 minutes in the chat room, so he's the hall monitor today. Appreciate that.
Just letting you know.
Dave actually has other shows to do. I only have this one, so why would I want to
8
go?
of them tonight.
Yeah, who cares? It's Friday. This is what I'm doing. Paul,
Dave
thanks for
actually
joining
has
us.
more podcasts than Luminary has subscribers. So
Oh, and audience.
Uh,
Paul, thanks for joining us.
always a pleasure. Looking for my shirt.
Keep looking. Stephanie, first
Hey.
time
Yay.
Roundtable. Thanks so much. And
Was
you're
a
popular in the chat. We have to bring you back.
Yay.
Stephanie
please
brings
do.
eyeballs.
May I need to do a shout out to my 4 podcasts because I am a crazy person. You can find that they're like expat life, technology, creativity, and books. We've revamped one of them to be bookish expats to include books and living overseas combined. Steph Fuccio, which I always have to spell, STEPHFUCCIO.weebly.com is the current site. It is changing, but that's where you can find all 4 of them.
Very cool.
Yay.
Podcastersroundtable.com or on YouTube. We are rocketing towards 1,000 subs. So
Woo!
nice.
we can't get there without your help. Subscribe. If you're still listening, you're the type. You would subscribe. So check us out once in a blue moon. You just hit subscribe. People use the subscribe button the way they use a like button. So we don't actually expect you to show up. Just press subscribe. I just want numbers. Money. $2 CPMs.
Ding.
5 cent.
iTunes gift
Beer
card.
commercials. iTunes gift cards.
There you go.
All right. I think I'm going to sell this show to Apple Podcast.
There you go.
We've established it's going to work. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. Podcasteroundtable.com. See you next time.
Thank you.
Later.